So let's review. So the Maimon is asking, what's the connection between two shilas? What's the connection between the Milchama against Amalek and until the Milchama with Amalek is resolved, so not Hashem's throne and name is incomplete. Just a correction, I didn't have a Chumash at the time, but Vayomer, maybe there's such a pirush, but Vayomer, who is speaking, Ki Yod al Keis Kod, that Hashem has sworn, his hand, his holy hand on his holy throne. Who's saying that is Moishe Rabbeinu saying that about the Eibishter. I'm sure there's also Purim with the Eibishter saying it, but it's the same Teichen. But that's Rashi at any rate. That Moishe is saying after that Milchama with Amalek, that this is a perennial, this is an eternal Milchama until he is vanquished, as we know elsewhere, and that is the final battle before Mashiach comes. But what's the connection between Hashem's name and throne and the battle with Amalek? The second question is that the Psukim clearly indicate that Amalek attacks leaving Mitzrayim, and moreover, till we get to Eretz Zovas Cholav Udvash, the land flowing with milk and honey, the Milchama with Amalek continues. Furthermore, the Pasuk stresses that Amalek attacks you when Hashem took you out, only Mitzrayim, from the poverty of Mitzrayim. No, I'm sorry. The poverty of Mitzrayim is not mentioned directly in connection with Amalek. But Amalek, it says merely that he attacks Eden and continues to attack them as they leave Mitzrayim till they get there at Savos Chalav Dvash. To understand that, we have to understand Yetzias Mitzrayim. And what's Yetzias Mitzrayim? Yetzias Mitzrayim is the Eibusha taking Eden out of the poverty. Ele eschem me'oni Mitzrayim. So the Maimon began to explain what is meant by poverty. So poverty, the Gemara says, "Ein oni ele bedas ve'ein osher ele bedas." That poverty is in essence poverty of the mind, and likewise wealth, richness, is the richness of the mind. And so explained in those base that we see that when a person is in a state of israchvas and ispashtus, expansiveness. We had mentioned, though the Maimon doesn't, that in general this is the union of simcha, which simcha is paid its geder. The whole point of simcha is that it breaks boundaries. So the person's in a state of simcha, then his mind is expansive. As we mentioned, the Maimon doesn't mention it, but this is manifest in the fact that someone that normally his enemy cannot tolerate, on the contrary, he embraces him in his simcha. That's because of the broadness of mind, as opposed to the pettiness of mind. So explain that when the person is in such a state, so the mind is broader, the midas are broader and richer, and not only the level of midas as they are born or even directed by seichel, but the midas as they are rooted in rotzen. What he's saying is that the state of simcha affects even the deepest keichas makifim of a person. His will, his rotzen, is far richer and deeper than if he's not in a state of expansiveness / simcha. So in Mitzrayim was the opposite. I think we finished the ice. Did we? Yeah. That in Mitzrayim is poverty. So he elaborated the poverty of Mitzrayim was both from the perspective of Oiris and Kelim. What does Oiris mean? Oiris means their own state, their own spiritual state, seichel and midas. Nothing was illuminated, nothing was expansive. The mind is small, the heart is small. In Yiddish, verquetscht, because of the pressures and certitude of Mitzrayim. Emunah they had, and Emunah is a gewaltige Sache, he says, and the foundation of everything. Habakkuk, the Gemara says, established all of Torah mitzvahs on one essence, Tzadik b'Manosa Yichya. Nonetheless, if that's all there is, says the Rebbe, and it doesn't, the mind and the heart is not engaged, there's no greater poverty than that. But it's only emunah. The person only is operating on emunah alone, and it doesn't engage mind and heart, then that's anius. That's poverty. So that was one union by the Yidden in Mitzrayim. They had this anius, the oir, their own spiritual state. Worse than that, the kelim. What does it mean, the kelim? That means you're not inspired. That's one thing. But another thing is inspiration is coming to you and is being poured and you're indifferent. You don't even have the keli to get light that comes from an outside source. Moishe Rabbeinu stands there and speaks the word of Hashem and garnished, unmoved. Unmoved. That's a spiritual poverty mitzad the kelim. Why was it? Because of the terrible golos, the difficult, the slavery, and ruach, which means shortness of breath, but also means ruach, ruchnius. The ruchnius was koitzer, was small and cut and narrow. That's the matzav of Mitzrayim. The whole avodah is to leave Mitzrayim. And in the avodah of leaving Mitzrayim, we have to contend with Amalek until we get to, in all of the levels, till we get to Eretz Zavas Cholav Dvosh, a land flowing with milk and honey, which the Rebbe will explain subsequently. We are now up to the second paragraph of Reish Beis. So till now, he explained the spiritual state of poverty in Mitzrayim. Furthermore, Shegam Hayitzim in Mitzrayim, even leaving Mitzrayim, was in a way, in a spiritually impoverished manner. I'll take you out of the poverty of Mitzrayim. The pasuk is hinting that even the Exodus itself, the Jews remained in a state of ani. How so? Mitzrayim, the pasuk describes how the Yidden had to flee. Why did they have to flee? Why didn't they leave leisurely and deliberately? Why was it in haste? It explains in Tankim of Betanya, the reason they had to run was not It wasn't because they had to run out of and before Pari changes his mind. They're not so. So they fled also implies that they told him that they're only going for 3 days. The question is why? The fact is that if they told Pari they're going, he has to send them free and forever, he would have to have done so. He was already a pawn in God's hand. And he had no choice. So what was the great rush? What was the hasty exodus? He explains in Tanya, they had to run because of themselves, because the evil in their souls was in its full force. And he said the left ventricle of the heart, that's where Nefesh Bahamis is located primarily. And from there it pervades the body. Had they stayed a moment longer, he explains in Tanya, they would have refused to go. As 80% already had done so previously. Why did they have to run out? They had to escape themselves. Because a moment longer in the spiritually polluted and the corrupt environment of Mitzrayim, particularly since they were no longer slaves at this point, so they would have refused to leave. which conveys how spiritually impoverished they were. Therefore, they had to run, they had to flee. They had to force themselves. What's the parallel in Avodah? Where the Nefesh Elikis has to force the Nefesh Bahamis into behavior that the person doesn't want to do. That's even the forcing means a behavior that Nefesh Bahamis itself would never do. Now, let me elaborate on a very beautiful point. So the influence of the intellect of the emotion is also a compulsion. The mind compels the heart. This is all basis of Tanya, that even if the heart desires to do something, if the mind understands how destructive it is, even though the heart still wants, but the nature is that the mind will reign supreme, provided he truly understands. That's the whole premise of Tanya. A person's a smoker, and he wants to smoke, and he enjoys smoking. But if he really understands, he's gone to the doctor's office, he sees a picture of his lungs, and he sees what every cigarette is doing, and how it's shortening his life, then he won't take a cigarette. He doesn't want, he still wants to. But Me'ech Shalat Ala Lev, that in Pel Mamish, the heart will surrender. The heart surrenders. But this is not the same as the Matzav in Yetzias Mitzrayim, as he goes on to say. The one we just described now, where because of the conviction in the mind, it overrides the impulse and the desire of the heart. But still, in the end of the day, the person can also, to some degree, this is the good thing for me. This is the right thing. So even though he's still drawn to that desire, but he understands how it's destructive. So there's an element of desire not to. There's an element of desire not to do that. He sees the results in front of him. So he's not going to continue in that destructive behavior, whatever it is. So there's a mokim in the heart. It's not that the heart itself came to this recognition. That the heart rules over them. Them means the various emotions of the heart. It's an internal conversation. How can I take this cigarette, or how can I engage in this behavior or in this relationship? And he understands how destructive it is, etc., etc. So the end is, there's no gun to his head. So the end, the emotions agree and they stop putting up a fight, and he resists and stops that behavior. In the world of the emotion, they understand in the emotional world that not to desire want this because it's destructive. You don't love and want something, it's going to harm you. So if he understands that it's harmful to him, he doesn't want it. So he says that, the effect of the intellect, which is compelling the heart, it's true. It's Me'ech Shalat Ala Lev, it's kfir. The contrast is going to be, however, in a moment, to the way it was by Yetzias Mitzrayim. So either he says the emotions agree, or they don't fully agree, but it takes hold in some degree, and they give up, the emotions stop pulling the person that way. That's what we speak about here. Yetzias Mitzrayim was a much greater state of impoverishment. Here it's much worse. He has to run away. He had to run away from Mitzrayim. It's not like in the first case, he faces his taiva, cigarettes on the table, or whatever the situation is. He's not going to reach for it because he understands in his seichel how it's destroying him and destroying his life. He doesn't have to run away from the cigarette. But then there's sometimes the taiva is so strong and the intellect is so weak in its persuasion that the only way he can control himself, he has to remove himself from the matzav. He simply has to stay away from this thing. Can't have a cigarette available. That's the matzav Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's true intellectual and emotional impoverishment. So therefore, there was the emunah that Abishai said, go, go, but what's wrong with Mitzrayim? And he still likes it. And again, the slavery was over. The Mitzrayim were their best friends. We're going to a desert. Desert, what? And what are we going to, what's happening in the desert? Commandments. Commandments. How many? What? Not interested. So the whole thing was, what? Mitzrayim were whisked out of Egypt, and they just allowed themselves to be whisked out. 80% said, no, we're not even going. The 20% allowed themselves to be taken. So I took you out, Mitzrayim, is even the going out was in a way of Oni Mitzrayim. Spiritual poverty. So that's the matzav of what? Of Yidden. That's the matzav of a person in the beginning of Avodah. The beginning of Avodah, Ruchnius, and so on. It's a distant world that at best he just believes in. But he has no relationship to. So the beginning is Ki Baruch Ha'am. Where do we have to go? But the destination is Eretz Zovas Cholav Udvash. So until we get there, the whole point of the Maimon is going to be there's Amalek and all of the levels of growth. And then at the end of the Maimon, the connection to Hashem's throne being full, complete, and his name complete. So what's the goal? Where are we going? Where do we have to come? Arrive at a place flowing with milk and honey. What's milk and honey? He's going to explain. First of all, it means, as we all know, the honey is honey of dates, and the milk is goats. Just Pashta saying Yonim. This is the ultimate. He's going to describe now that milk and honey is the ultimate state, the complete and utter contrast to the spiritual impoverishment that we described earlier. Like he explains the entire and length in other places. The whole of milk and honey refer to intellect. More specifically, and he'll indicate the association. We're not talking an external level of seichel, but a pnimis level of seichel, which we'll explain soon. Milk and honey, on a literal level, there's sweetness and there's pleasure, there's delight. Honey is sweet. Like we find the prohibition that with any korban cannot include also honey. The koyal kol minim is secret. It's any sweetening component cannot be placed in the korban, referring to the mincha and other things, the meal offering. So that's clear. Honey, sweet, delightful. What about milk? Milk also is connected to tainug, to delight. Kidua beer, and it's known the beer. Why is it that a child's earliest, the formative years, the body growing, expanding, the child is nourished on milk? Because it's the milk that he's nourished by. Why? Because it's required now is the expansiveness of the body. What causes the body to expand is tainug, and the opposite is true. When a person has the opposite of tainug, the person is experiencing the opposite of tainug, is completely uncomfortable. The body contracts. And the state of time it expands. That good news expands the bones, the famous story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So milk is critical to the growth of the child, where the bones have to grow and expand and so on. So where is the true delight? In some understanding something? Not necessarily. We have a true delight when we engage and understand something on a level of pnimius hamoichin, which is going to explain in a moment, the inner, the pnimius of seichel. Kenir b'chush, like we see, kasher asogi b'bchinas chitzonius haseichel. The person only understands something externally, which means really he doesn't understand the thing itself. He understands the thing by its association with other things, through parables, etc. So he doesn't have an understanding of the thing itself, so he's of the subject matter itself. So then his pleasure, delight is weak. It's only when he understands the idea with the true, literally force of seichel, and engaging the intellect with all of its depth, then that's when intellect is in its force, that the gishmak, he really enjoys what he's learning, and that is the beginning of the expression of the delight. The expression of the delight begins to be expressed when his understanding of it is deep and engaged. So the essential tainug only comes to the fore when the understanding engages not the external dimension of intellect, but the very depth of intellect. Now he's going to illustrate this further, so let's see in the Maamar itself. Explain this further. So in Pnimius HaTainug itself, there are two levels, Cholav v'Dvash, milk and honey. Hainu, HaTainug shemitzad Pnimius HaChochma. Now what is it? When the tainug comes from Pnimius HaChochma, that's in a word of Cholav. Tainug shemitzad Pnimius Bina, and when the Bina is fully engaged in the Pnimius Dika way, that's honey. She's now going to explain. Inyan advash meid al Pnimius Bina. So honey is connected or expresses, indicates, points to, symbolic of Pnimius Bina, which means not just an understanding. Bina is an understanding, but Pnimius Bina. Again, it means understanding the subject itself directly, not through means of an analogy or an association. Disgalus atika bebina, atik, which is tainug. So where's tainug expressed? When a person has a true, again, pnimistic understanding, a true grasp of the subject. Maamar, as it says in Zohar, the Eved HaLevi, the Eved HaLevi who? So says the Zohar that this goes, V'Eved HaLevi. Yeah, the question, what does this do with bin? I don't know. Do atikir. This goes on, it's a pasuk. It's a pasuk in Parshas Korach. It's after the whole rebellion and how the gifts have to be given to the Chavdallah Matanis, go to the Kohanim and the Leviim. Anyway, the Zohar says that this goes on Atik, and somehow this has to do with Bina. I don't know. I need to look up the sources you don't have. He doesn't even bring a source. He wants to say that bin is galus atik is in bina, and that's expressed in this pasuk. The Levi is apparently bina, and in bina is expressed atik. Maybe the Kohen is chacham, I don't know. Anyway, it will be ikar, but pnimius bina, So where is Tainuk revealed? Not in Chitzonius of Bina, but a true, deep, and thorough understanding. Now he explains. Bina is understanding, analyzing the subject, and understanding it to its detail. So we see when is the true delight in his understanding? We understand when he understands it clearly and in all of its expansion. That's when he has tainuk, not when he has a marginal understanding, but when it's the concept is clear. But this itself was a gufa when is he trapped? When does he truly have the geschmack in what he's learning? And what's pnimis bin haindel bechlolus? He's not grasping the idea through garments. What's garments? Misholim, vasboris, parables, and explanations. But rather, he understands the idea itself. It's not supported but buttressed with other ideas, explanations, with misholim, with parables. So to truly understand the subject itself, that's when the true delight is experienced. Be it out of bekitzer and further elaboration to understand this bekitzer. It's a difference to the way we understand physical things and spiritual matters. We talk about physical things and explain them. We understand the actual substance of what we're learning about. We see it, we can touch it, it's there. We talk about spiritual things. We learn about it. It's like a blind person learning about colors. He can say all the words and all the language, but he's only learning about the color. He doesn't have a grasp of what a color really is because he cannot see it. It's ashara means literally an estimation, a general idea. Through illustrations and explanations. So illustrations are illustration of how this thing manifests. But lower than that, that's one way of understanding something. Its effects, illustrations in this scenario, in that scenario, this is what happens. But even a lower way of understanding it is adem misholim, a parable. A parable is another story altogether that is not this thing, but it's a parable, it's a model. The nation, maybe it's a parable of a king and you had a daughter, a son. The nation, maybe it's a moshel, like the Moishe vasboros. I'm sorry. The nation, maybe it's a moshel. Or ya dugma mit dvarim gashmim. So how do we understand ruchnis? You have to bring a moshel from dvarim gashmim, from physical matters. Are you Messiah? So the person estimates literally and imagines that he has some grasp. That's the way it also works in ruchnis. So he can't have a true tainuk because he's learning about the thing, but not really grasping it. He doesn't understand the actual substance and therefore can't understand it clearly. So that's what we mean by chitzonius bina, an understanding of something via the agency of other things, but not the pure concept itself. However, in pnimis bina pnimis bina means when you understand the idea itself. He understands the thing, not as it's enclosed in something else. With the Gemara being a ruchnim here, when Yaschad the Gan Eden, in Elam has we don't have it, but in Gan Eden that's the reward. In Gan Eden, then you're going to learn everything you learned here. Here you learned about it. There you're going to grasp it. Tzadikim sit and delight. That's tainuk. from the Ziva Shechina, the rays of the divine presence, Shuyin Asagas Elikus, Befin Shal Asagas, some who see they're grasping godliness, and they're experiencing godliness. It's explained in many places. The difference between this world and Gan Eden. We learn about godliness, that it exists. We learn about the metzius of godliness. And again, it's all through explanations and illustrations and parables. Gan Eden is Gan Eden is the true seichel. Gimel Rishonis is in general Chacham bin and Das shall yodom bo gam mahus elikus b'avon avasod. It's not exactly clear what he means here, but at any rate, bottom line, it's clear that in Gan Eden, the seichel of nefesh elikisin is his full expression, and therefore not limited and filtered by the body and nefesh habahamis. So therefore, it's able to have an understanding, and a true understanding of elikus. V'ad sha'asog yibeh from the pnimius bina, haine b'afshota b'tachlis, is completely divested of gashmius and anything else. It's the true understanding, objective understanding of the elikus. Hasagas haseichel k'moishu, understanding the idea being elikus, the manifestation of the divine, the way it is, unfiltered. So and that's called honey. That's bina. That's bina. Now we're saying here, just remember, he just finished saying it's not shaykh milamaza, it's only in Gan Eden. However, he's saying the Yetzias Mitzrayim has to lead to Eretz Zavos Cholav Advash, so we'll see. What is Cholav? Cholav, he said, is Pnimius Chacham. There's also two levels. It's a Chacham, Pnimius Chacham. The difference being, Chitzonis Chacham, he has scholarship Chacham. He has an epiphany, an intellectual epiphany. That's a Chacham. That's Chitzonius of Chacham. Pnimius Chacham, he read the Chacham. Not intellectual epiphany, but the truth is something he sees. It's so, I mean, physical side. It's a spiritual side, but it's completely, when you see something, there's no lying. Camera doesn't lie. You see it the way it is. That object is illuminating and flooding the brain. Pnimis HaChachma is, the truth is so clear that it's not dressed in rationality. He sees the truth, the objective truth for what it is. So he sees the truth of the concept as it is, again, not justified by some kind of intellectual epiphany, intellectually, but the is the truth is bizgalas by it. Not through estimations, and it's not through any parable, and even higher, not even through any other garment of rationale, of explaining it. But the truth itself is so crystal clear, it doesn't need to be explained. The idea is so true, it doesn't have to be explained or justified. That's when a person experiences that, that's cholov, that's a tainug of etzem hachacham. Now when you see something, that can never be challenged, no matter what arguments people throw up against the person. He saw it. Because when he sees something, he's grasped the essence of that, and that's not negotiable thereafter. So what's cholov? Cholov is, again, the chacham is this epiphany, this I get it. But not that I get it because now I understand it. I get it because the truth itself illuminates.
Rabbi,
we just finish the sentence. So this comes from a very deep place in the nefesh where the truth is known. That's how we can see it. Yeah, question?
Yeah, he brings a mashal for Bina by Gan Eden, but Chochma didn't seem to be existing, that level to experience.
It's Atzilus, yeah. Chochma is Atzilus more.
I'm saying it doesn't seem like there's a way to experience it because he didn't bring a mashal to it. He brought for Gan Eden, but Chochma he didn't bring any And it seems that it's not attainable.
Well, actually, it is. The whole point of the Mayim is we have to get to Eretz Zavas Cholov Advash. But it is, Cholov is, Gan Eden is in Bria. And Tzadikim Gedolim have a Shaykhis Tatzilus. This level of Chochmah that he's describing now is Takatzilus. That's Bittul B'Metzius. That's the truth because the truth is the truth, not because I understand it or filter. That's Bittul Ayesh. We're describing here really in Bina is Bittul Ayesh, it's another way of describing it, and Chochmah is Bittul B'Metzius. It's the difference between Bria and Atzilus. The point of the Maimab, and I didn't learn to the end, is that this is attainable now. On some level, attainable now. Through Avodah, the only caveat is Amalek. Amalek stands in the way between Pnimis in our world, having we'll see, a connection to Pnimis Abin and even Pnimis HaChochma is Amalek to be seen. The Lam is that.